Welcome to Never Buy the Book podcast. This is your host, Kelly Scholes. At 24, I was dead broke and a full-blown alcoholic. By the time I was 40, I was completely debt-free and a multimillionaire. Now I share my secrets to success and transformation with audiences around the world as an author, speaker, and success mentor, and of course, as your podcast host. Each Never Buy the Book episode features a guest who has overcome obstacles to live a life of incredible fulfillment. We're so excited to have Andrew Popa as today's guest. Andrew, better known to his friends and family as Catalin, lives in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, with his wife and 3 daughters. He holds a master in business administration and professionally helps entrepreneurs around the world buy and sell businesses. He also worked with World Vision for a number of years as a senior director of operation for the Middle East and Eastern Europe. I'm sure we'll learn more about that later. And with that, I'd like to welcome Andrew Popa. Is it all right if I call you Catalin?
You may, Kelly. Thank you.
Perfect.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. So, first of all, tell us about the painting behind. You're in Oklahoma City, but it doesn't look like you are. It looks like you're in Europe somewhere.
I am. I'm actually not in Oklahoma City. I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's where I live.
Tulsa.
I work in Oklahoma City, so you're halfway there. But this beautiful painting behind me is from the Netherlands, Amsterdam. Okay. That's where you see the canals and the red bikes and the beautiful buildings. It's not a Van Gogh. It's just an ordinary IKEA painting.
Oh, IKEA painting. Okay, so there's no special story about getting it in Europe or.
Oh, we got it in Europe, all right.
You did,
and,
okay.
We've used it and we've enjoyed it for many years. But again, it's a beautiful picture rendition of Amsterdam, and so always reminds us of that beautiful city.
Yeah, perfect. So last Christmas, we were at your mother and father-in-law's, my aunt and uncle's, which, by the way, we are related. And you told a story about escaping Romania. And when I was listening to your story, and then later after we talked, something came up, and we kind of titled this whole podcast after it, and that's Courage or Insanity. And, when you told your story, because I've been through quite a bit in my life too, but to hear your story, it's like, wow, because you hear about people that have, escaped countries and been refugees and different things, but I never knew anybody until you told that story. And it was just so riveting that it was like, I want people to hear this. I want to hear what you went through, what you did, why you did it, and how you got to where you're at. Because going from Romania like you did to where you are now and being very successful and with your family and business and everything, it's like people need to hear this. So take us back, last Christmas you shared the story with the family. So take us back to there and share your story with us about, what you went through, your thought process, everything when you decided to escape Romania.
My pleasure. Well, most people will remember the fall of communism in 1989. And, they'll think back and perhaps even see some of the pictures in their minds of the Berlin Wall falling and Russia and Eastern Europe emerging out of communism, emerging out of a pretty bleak and dark era. And so that's where I grew up. I grew up in Romania, a communist country, deeply entrenched in the old Soviet bloc. And when I grew up in the 70s and 80s, things progressively got worse. 70s were still decent, and jobs and food was available for everyone. But then the 80s rolled around, and all of a sudden, food was nowhere to be had. Jobs were few and far between, and life was generally very sad and bleak, and we're lacking a lot of things. I remember growing up and being asked by my parents to go and sign at stores just to hold a spot because something would come up. Some truck or vehicle will come and deliver some goods. We never knew what, but we were always present in line, waiting to see what might show up at the grocery store so that we could buy it. Could be bread, could be milk, could be just about anything. So things became in the 80s, and especially as mid 80s rolled around, and then we moved on into 86, 87, 88, and so on. It seemed like life was getting further and further. It was getting worse, and we could see no light on the horizon, no positive sign that would help us out of that misery. And that's when.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's when my parents, as a result of a death in our family, I had twin sisters, and one of them died at the age of 6 months. That brought upon a spiritual search in my parents, particularly my mom, who seeing her young daughter die in her arms in a hospital because of lack of medication, and she was so desperate that she started to seek what might be out there that would provide meaning to this life of hers. So she drew closer to church. She drew closer to God. And after praying for many months on end, and I remember her specifically going pretty much to every church and an opportunity she had to inquire and learn and grow spiritually. It seemed she had a spiritual revelation, and God did speak to her directly and told her what she would need to do. And so she eventually became a believer. We grew up atheist. Going to church wasn't encouraged. Church was available in the country, but wasn't necessarily encouraged. And while growing up in school, I remember being indoctrinated that there's no God, and that atheism is the only true and modern and pure form of being a good citizen. And so that's how my mom grew up also for most part. But then she knew that wasn't true.
Is that what was taught to you guys in school and through the communist regime?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you dare go to church, then you receive you are marked for persecution to some degree. And that's what happened to me too, as my mom started going to church and had her spiritual revelation. She started dragging me to church also. Yeah. I was a bit of a rebellious teenager, and going to church, pulling me to go to church with her was her form of offering me a chance to a better life and an alternative to what I was doing on the street, playing soccer, hanging out with kids, and just for most part, being a rebellious teenager.
So, and what age was that when she first started dragging you to church?
It was about 1984, so I was 14.
14, okay.
Yeah, and from 14 to 16, it was my period of just trying to learn if I really enjoy church. And then at 16, I did fall in love with church and God, and became a member of that church. I was baptized and professed my faith. And then from 16 to about 18, I was part of a discipleship group. It was an underground discipleship group where I was invited to grow in my faith by studying. And I need to clarify that at that time, Bibles weren't available in the country. Anyone who had a Bible had a precious, precious gift, and or books, Christian books of any kind. They were oftentimes hand copied on paper by individuals, and those hand copies were passed from one person to another because they were forbidden. And even parts of the books, and especially as you went out in the countryside, most of the folks and believers in small villages had no Bibles, had no there was no Word of God. There was no Christian literature to help them grow in their faith. They oftentimes had a handwritten material that they copied and read and learned from.
So what were you going to school at that time, or were you just running the streets being a rebellion teen?
No, I was going to school.
You were going to school?
It was mandatory going to school.
Okay.
I had no choice. I had to do that. I was just rebellious from the point of view that I wanted to be outside and not follow my mom or not follow my parents' instructions. But I still went to school because school was a way of getting away from home, and so that was good. I enjoyed school. I had no problem with that. For most part, graduation and high school graduation, especially at that time in the country, was pretty high, up in the 90% range. People were forced to go to school. You had no choice. If you didn't go to school, then you got in trouble with the police, got in trouble with the law. And so, but part of my spiritual development side was being part of this discipleship group where we were studying with materials and books and information brought in to the country by foreign citizens who were tourists, came as tourists and left materials and brought materials for us to study from. And we cherished and that those materials, those books were very precious to us, and we passed them from one person to another. And but I remember quite clearly that I was told initially when I joined the group that this is where we're going to be meeting. But when you come there, make sure that you don't come alongside anyone else that you know. Come by yourself. And when you come to the store, this is how many times you knock, and you wait. Make sure that no one follows you. And so we had very clear instructions to ensure that the secrecy of the group was well maintained, because the church was undergoing tremendous persecution at that time, and we had a lot of church members thrown in jail, sent to forced labor camps. So life wasn't, being a believer in Romania and the communist country at that time wasn't an easy thing. You had to be very motivated and very mindful and very thoughtful about how you lived your life. And so when I joined that group, I was given a code. I was given a number. And my number was 007. I didn't know at that time what 007 was. It was
James
just
Bond,
007.
huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that was my code number. And no one could. We didn't share names. We didn't share addresses or anything of that sort. And so I went through that discipleship group for about 2 years. And then in 1989, early summer 1989, we went to meet with an American missionary who had come in the country, I think illegally. I'm not exactly sure how he got in the country, or maybe he was a tourist. And we were all invited to go meet with this American missionary who came to encourage us. And so we were out in the outskirts of my hometown of Bucharest. We were given a time and address where to show up. And again, we're told to be careful not to walk with any of our friends or anyone that we knew. Just come alone and then leave alone, one at a time, every so often. And so we went to this meeting. It was about 30 of us meeting with this American missionary. We had a great time, enjoyed it, left. And about 2 weeks later, I got called into the police. I was asked to go and show myself at such and such a time at this police headquarters. And I was scared when they told me I had to go there. I was like, what did I do? And so I showed up, and it was just pretty much like you see in the movies, a dark room, dark hallways. You walk through this echoey chamber, and you get to a room where you have a table and 2 chairs and a person on the other side of the table. It's a very scary environment. It's not conducive to.
And how old were you at that time?
I was 18.
18, okay.
I was 18, yeah.
Okay, so you get called into the police station. You
Yeah, I
go in
got
there.
called in, and I was told that I had broken the law because I went to meet with a foreign citizen in the country.
Okay.
That I participated in an illegal gathering, and I was accused of being part of a subversive political movement. And we were told that we clearly broke the law, and we were going to be suffering consequences. And so when I heard that, I got really afraid and
Yeah.
scared. I mean, we again, like I said, I've known lots of people who were sent to labor camps and
Hmm.
were imprisoned because of that. And the whole mentality of the regime in that country, of the communist mindset, is to create distrust among citizens. And the one thing we knew is that around us, any one of our friends, relatives, neighbors could be an informant working for the circuit police. And we had to be careful. We had to be mindful what we talked about. We had to toe the party line and not engage in any um, subversive talk, anything that wasn't in agreement with that ideology. Because if you were out of line, if you were brave enough to declare to speak your mind,
Hmm.
you were quickly grabbed, snatched, sent away. There's no patience, and there's no
Oh, wow.
allowance. There's no forgiveness for anyone who speaks their mind. And so that environment of distrust was so pervasive and so entrenched in the culture that everyone was pretty afraid, pretty afraid of saying anything. And
Hmm.
you went to church and you worshipped, and you knew that we were monitored. We knew that someone in our congregation would be reporting
Yeah.
on us, would be creating a file, and so forth. And sure enough, when I got called into the police, I was told that someone at the gathering
Hmm.
was an informant working for the police, and my name was on the list of individuals who participated in this illegal gathering.
Wow.
And so over the course of about 3 months, I got called in 2, 3 times a week to give account over and over again for what transpired, who was there, what we talked about, how I got there, who invited me, what was discussed, who was the individual who was there, who I sat next to. And everything went into a great degree and a high level of detail, trying to extract as much information from me as possible.
Hmm.
And I was just completely honest and told them exactly what I knew. I knew that they knew,
Right.
who was
Yeah.
there. So I wasn't going to complicate things by trying to fabricate information that wasn't accurate. And so then at the end of the 3 month period, they said, okay, time's up. It's time for you to pay your dues. And so I remember my skin just shriveling up on me, knowing that something bad is going to happen.
Right.
And they told me I had broken the law, and my life is over, and
Oh, wow.
I will not amount to anything in that country, in that society, because
Wow.
I was not in line with the ideology. I was subversive, and I was
You had your
threatened
own
that my
thoughts.
parents. I had my own thoughts, right? And I was threatened that my parents would lose their home, and they would lose
Wow.
their job, and would be living on the street, and that life is going to be hellish.
So you had graduated from high school by then?
I
Or were
hadn't
you,
yet. I was in the
you
process. I was
okay.
just almost getting ready to graduate from high school, and
Okay. So you hadn't started
that's
working yet?
yeah. And so that's when, after they presented me with the evidence,
Hmm.
and what would happen to me, they said, but if you're willing to collaborate and cooperate with us, we might be willing to let go of some of these charges, and
So
so we can make life easier for you.
so if you don't mind me asking, what were they going to do with you?
I don't know. I'm sure
You don't.
I have no
So you
idea.
never
They told me
never
that I
knew.
broken the law, and
Okay. So you didn't know if you were going to a labor camp or what you were going to do?
I don't know. I really don't know. They didn't tell me exactly what what my next day is going to look like. They told me that I had broken the law and my life was over and I should be ready to suffer the consequences. And so over the course of those 3 months, that was a message that just was ingrained and communicated over and over again, because that it was just, they were sowing fear in my soul to make sure that I collaborate with them. And so I was afraid. I was afraid for my life. I was afraid for my family, because I knew that whatever they were saying that might be happening very likely was going to happen. And then when they presented me with a way out, because they were nice people, they said, you just, you don't have to do anything. You just go and show up when we tell you to go show up someplace. You take note, see what's going on, and you come back and report to us. So you become an informant working for the secret police. And so this is not your typical street police. This is your secret communist. This is the Nazi of the communist regime, right? So those were the men in black, so to say. And so they let me go. They said, you'd go out and you better follow up and do what we tell you to do. And I was terrified. I knew that if I didn't do it, I would be suffering the consequences. And I knew that if I did do it, I would be no better than those people that I was fearing, than the one that turned me in, than the people that we knew that lived amongst us, that were not our friends, were not our brother and sister. They were only friend in name, but not in deed. And so that's when I knew something had to happen, and I didn't know exactly what. And shortly afterwards, I just had this thought, talking to a couple of friends who had relatives overseas, and I realized that's what I need to do. I need to leave the country. I need to escape from Romania. And so roughly about a month later, so this was in around September 1989, and exactly about a month later, we had formulated a plan with 3 other friends from my church, friends of mine, and we formulated a plan to leave the country. And we knew that we had to go from southern Romania, about 7 hours ride by car, to the northwestern border, and cross the border into Hungary, and then escape into the west. And so that's what we're planning on doing. We left. We said goodbye to our parents and family members. We didn't tell them what we're going to do, because they were they needed to know that they needed to be able to declare that they didn't know what was happening, that we were away, and they couldn't be held responsible for our actions. But our parents helped us. They gave us money, and they encouraged us, and they were supportive. And so we appreciated that. And then we went to this border town in just about half an hour away from the border. And we lived there for about a month, from October to November. We knew that the borders were heavily protected, secured, and we couldn't just, first of all, we didn't have a passport. That wasn't like, going through the border control check and you leave the country and everything is good. We had to leave illegally. And we knew that the borders were well protected, secured, and we had to cross the border illegally. And we didn't trust ourselves to do it on our own. We're looking for someone who could help us do it, because we had heard of individuals who were engaged in that type of activity, crossing the border, crossing individuals to the next country. And so over the course of that month, we met with countless individuals, and they were promising us the moon and the sun, and it was going to cost us a boatload of money. But not one of them stood out as someone that we could trust, someone that we could follow. Because we had to also be very careful that those individuals were not, on their turn, informants working for the police, and we would be walking straight into a trap. And so one day, I remember we met with this just kind of shabby looking guy. And he told us he was a truck driver and he drove an oil rig, and he drove by the border. And his plan was to let us get inside the oil tank where he carried the oil, the gasoline, okay, right? And so the plan was to get inside the rig. And then when he got close to the border, he would open the hatch, we jump out, run, and we would be fine, right? And we thought this was great. This is the best plan we've ever heard. But we were so dumb, and we didn't know what was, how dangerous that was.
Yeah.
So just that night, I remember calling my mom, calling my parents, and in very coded language, we told them that we it was going to happen. And so that's when my mom all of a sudden said, well, I had this very strange dream about you, and God is telling me that whatever you're planning on doing, you shouldn't be doing, because I saw you in a very dark room dying without oxygen. You were asphyxiating, and it's not good. And so I didn't tell her what we were going to do. I told her that it was time. And so I knew that this was a warning from God, and we had to to drop that plan. We had to run away, and we did.
Look for plan B, right?
We looked for a plan 2015. And so in the end, we were so desperate. We went and found a map, and we said, okay, this is the map. This is a river. If we follow this river from Romania to Hungary, we're not going to get lost, because that was our fear, that we were going to get lost and we would be walking into traps. And so we said, this is what's going to happen. Follow the river from point A to point B, a straight shot. We're going to be fine. And so execution time comes. This was early December now already. And it started snowing. And in the town, that 30 minutes away from the border, it was snowing heavily. And we thought, well, this is actually kind of good, because we could, we'll have sheets on us, we'll blend in with the snow, we'll camouflage, and it will be fine. And so we got all ready. We had a car waiting for us. And it was a gentleman who lived in a village right next to the border. And so we got in the car, he slowed the car down just enough for us to jump out of that car in the middle of the night. And when we got to that spot where we were supposed to catch the river and follow the river, there was no snow on the ground. Everything was black, and we were standing in our white suits in the middle of the night, just like ghosts, waiting to be shot at, or waiting to be seen from a mile away. And so we realized, we got to change something to our plan here. So we took everything off, buried in the ground, and we started walking. And there was, at that time, my heart was beating, 200 beats a minute. I'm not exaggerating.
What's going through your mind at that time?
Life was constantly flashing in front of our very eyes, because we didn't know what was in front of us. We were in the middle of the night, following a river, crossing a heavily fortified border, and we knew that we could be shot, we could be caught, we could be put in prison. And getting in prison, it wasn't just here you are, we caught you, you go to prison now. The torture, the pain, the everything was tremendous. And we were very fearful. But we also knew that God was with us. And we had this comfort and security that we were going to be okay. And that came through over and over again as we followed this river, frozen at times. We walk on flocks of birds who, all of a sudden start flying in the middle of the night, making, a bunch of noise and ruckus and, frightening us. But probably the most, I'd say the greatest experience that we've had in that journey it was coming to a point where, as we got closer to a bridge, we noticed that there was a soldier, a border patrol guard, moving back and forth, and looking down and monitoring the horizon, and obviously protecting his post there. And we're so close to him, but we're just down in the river bay, and we're close enough that he could just look down and see us, and start shooting. And we froze. We froze because we knew that it was too late to go back. We had been walking for several hours, 3 or 4 hours by that time, and it was 2 or 3 in the morning, and we couldn't go any further because he was there, planted firmly on the bridge. We couldn't just go beneath the bridge and move beyond him. And so we dropped down and prayed, and we said, God, you've brought us this far. For sure, you're not going to let us be captured right now. And so we in our desperation, we barely said amen. And here's a train coming in the distance and reaching the bridge. And at that point, the soldier has to get off the bridge, let the train go by, and taking advantage of the noise of the train, the soldier being off the bridge, we just ran underneath that bridge and kept running for a long time. And I remember a while later, hours later, early in the morning, we were walking and finally found a sign. It was a barbed wire fence, a sign. And we knew this probably was the border. This probably was the barbed wire fence that protected the country. And we were at that point where we could just go through that barbed wire fence and be on the other side. But we also knew that plenty of those fake borders were set up for individuals who become careless after crossing the border and start making noise, and people are waiting on the other side, and you get snatched up. And so as we went through that fence, big gaping hole in that fence, we knew someone went through it beforehand. We were still careful, and then we walked for a little while longer and came across a bridge with a sign in Hungarian. And we knew at that time that we were in Hungary. And we wanted to rejoice so badly. We wanted to shout. We were just so ecstatic. But at the same time, we couldn't afford to be careless. So we just internally bubbled up and then kept walking. Our goal was to get as close as possible to Budapest and seek asylum in Budapest, which we did. We walked as much as possible. Excuse me. Then we got a ride on the train for a short while and made it to Budapest and went to the U.S. Embassy in Budapest and asked for political asylum. And we were told very kindly, glad you're safe. However, we can't help you. It's going to take about 7 years for you to be able to immigrate to the U.S. And we didn't know what happened. We were just heartbroken. We said we risked our lives to get here, and we're told it's impossible. We had to wait here 7 years. And Hungary at that time, the world was changing so fast. Hungary was really just a freshly liberated country. Hungary was still, they were trading people back and forth between Hungary and Romania, people that were caught crossing the border. So we're afraid of going to the authorities and asking for asylum because we could be sent back. And so after a few days in Hungary, we all of a sudden someone told us there's a revolution happening in Romania. The regime fell. And when we heard that, we thought, no, this is impossible. It can't happen. This is fake news, at that time. The fake news of 1989. And so...
and by now, how long had you been out of the country?
Probably a couple weeks. A couple of weeks. We were living in different places in Budapest, trying to make ends meet. There were a few charities that looked after us, a few churches that provided help and gave us a place to stay and spend the night. And we're just waiting to formulate a game plan and see what we need to do next. And then just before this was getting really close to Christmas, and that's when the revolution in Romania was taking place, and we were just we didn't believe what was what we kept hearing. And then Christmas Eve of 1989, well, a lot of people remember that the former dictator was summarily tried and executed, he and his wife. Christmas Eve 1989, televised all around the world, and we saw that, and we still didn't believe it. We said we need to get out of here because we're too close to the country. We're so fearful that we're just being tricked. And so in Christmas Eve 1989, we crossed the border again from Hungary into Austria, and followed the same plan. Got us close to the border, followed the river from Hungary into Austria, and then the following morning we were in Austria. We went to the authorities, local police, and asked for political asylum. And they said, "Well, welcome to Austria. Glad you're here." Put us in a car and took us back to the border with Hungary. And we could see the policemen and the border patrol arguing, and probably they were saying, "You got to take them back. We cannot accept them." And the Hungarians were like, "Oh, we don't want them. They're not ours." And so finally, the Austrians gave up. The policeman came back in the car and said, "Well, okay," so drove us back into town, put us on a bus, and fed us. They were very kind to us, fed us, and said, "You go to Vienna. In Vienna, there's a large refugee camp, and that's where you'll get help." And so in Vienna, we went to the refugee camp right outside Vienna, a place called Traiskirchen. We arrived there December 25th, Christmas Day, 1989, and the whole place was shut down because of Christmas. We slept on the floor for a few nights, and then we were processed right after Christmas. And we were offered the opportunity to be in the queue for receiving political asylum and being able to immigrate to one of these countries. And generally, most people would immigrate to Canada, US, or Australia. And we were happy to go anywhere, literally, just so we could be as far as possible from Romania. And so in that period of time, we were there about 2 years, from December to October 1991, just about 22 months, waiting to be processed. It took about 2 years for someone to go through the processing period, and then they were able to immigrate. And we initially, the first couple of months, we were locked up in large quarantine halls with thousands of individuals from around the world. It was early, just before the war in Serbia and Bosnia was breaking. It was becoming a real incident, and we had thousands of Bosnians and individuals running from the conflict that was emerging there. We had individuals running the war because the first Gulf Wars was also brewing, and we had Kurdish refugees coming from Iraq and Turkey into Western Europe by the thousands. We had some people from the former communist countries seeking political asylum and wanting to immigrate and go elsewhere. We had people from Vietnam. We had people from Africa. There was just thousands of it. The world was there.
Yeah. And everybody wanted to go somewhere else.
Everybody was running from something, was wanting to escape conflict, was wanting to escape a life where they couldn't be who they were.
Wow. So October 91. So then where do you go from there?
Well, in this period of time, and this is living in Austria for that as a refugee for those almost 2 years was just a blessing in many forms. As we were sent to various small holding stations across the country from the main processing area near Vienna, we were dispatched about 60 kilometers, about 40 miles outside Vienna, and we were in that place waiting to be processed. And at that point, we got involved with the local church. You know, we got to know a lot of fellow believers, and we're happy to worship and fellowship with them and experience freedom of worship in a new country, in a democratic country. We got to know many missionaries who work with refugees in helping them in various forms, working with their children, teaching English, introducing them to Christianity, and helping them with their medical needs. The needs were great, and the government and the country didn't have enough resources in many ways to help these thousands of refugees waiting to be processed and waiting to immigrate. So all these missionaries that were coming, student missionaries primarily, were just a blessing to the refugees who all of a sudden they had a friend. They had someone to talk to. They had someone that can teach them English, someone who could take them to a doctor's appointment, or someone who can play with their kids. And so I was able to travel with one such missions group and be able to translate from English and German to Romanian. And they were showing concerts, and they were doing Bible studies, and they had movie nights, and they had all sorts of fun events with the refugees and their children. And well, for me, it was a blessing because one of the missionaries, a young girl named Shannon, I got to know her pretty well, and hanging out with this group, got me really close to her. And so I got to, at the end of her tour of, I think she was there for 15 months. At the end of her tour, then I was able to marry her, and then we're able to come to the U.S. as a result of our marriage. And things for me took a different turn than for most of the refugees in the country then. But just meeting Shannon and working with her team, and then just being part of that culture, and it was a blessing in many ways.
So yeah, it was quite the story. So how do you think the determination of escaping has helped you in life?
Well, escaping.
You had to be quite determined to go through that, to not know if you were going to get recaptured, whether you were going to get shot. I mean, those are things that most people don't go through in life. And the determination to do that at 19 years old, like I say, was it courage or insanity?
But it was all of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above. It was fear.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our motivation was fear-based. I was fearful for my life. I was fearful for my parents' lives and livelihoods. And I knew that, you see, growing up in a country that had almost no contact with the external world, we didn't know what was happening in the world. We didn't know what the outside world looked like. Well, all we knew was the 1970s and 80s movies coming from the US, where life was pretty bleak. The drug scene, the crime, the overpopulated cities, the unemployment. So this is the communist propaganda fed us all that stuff, telling us that, just the Western world is a mess. Here you are safe. Here we provide for you. We will look after you. You just have to, stay within your place, but we will look after you.
Do what you're told.
Do what you're told, exactly. And so most people were fearful that, if they leave that country, where they go to? They go to a place in a country that is falling apart. And, I remember seeing the pictures of New York City in the 1970s and 80s, and they were just downright scary. And it's like, I don't want to be there. But so, yeah, it is courage. It is fear, it is courage, it is insanity. I mean, it is on one hand, it's just the blessing of youthfulness, right? Because you have no attachments, you have no you have a whole life ahead of you. You're not fearing, you don't have dependents and individuals that whose lives depend on you. And if you do something wrong, it's not just your life, it's their lives also that will suffer the consequence. And so I was young, I didn't have those attachments, I didn't have those dependencies, and so I was motivated. I was fearful.
Yeah.
And I was a bit insane too, probably.
I think so, yeah. So how has that helped you in life and business and with your family and business? And
it gives you courage, right? It gives you courage to try. It gives you courage to experiment, to go where no person has gone before, to do things that others may shy away from because of whatever reason. So I would say, it does, it shapes your life in such a way that helps you make decisions, knowing that, knowing what you've left behind, knowing how things could turn out if you don't speak up, if you follow the party line, if you stay within your seat. And on the other hand, if you're bold enough to step out, to speak up, to do what you think is right, to follow that path less traveled, then the rewards are much better, much greater than if you stay within the boundaries.
Yeah, because if I ask you now, would you go back and do it again?
It would be difficult to do it again now, right?
Yeah.
It would be hard. I would be fearful for my family because I knew that I know that if I left and left them behind, that they would suffer tremendous consequences for that. So I would probably, we'll have to think twice before I do something like that.
Yeah.
If someone would do that, and I know people that have done that, they've done it out of sheer desperation.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, what's the alternative? It's fear can be a motivator, but fear can also be an inhibitor, an inhibiting factor. So, I didn't, at this time, probably fear would not necessarily help me move forward. Fear would probably hold me in place, then give me wings.
Yeah. Wow. So, during our conversations and talking and stuff, you have given back, you have helped refugees. So tell us what you've done and what you and Shannon have done and about the family that you've helped from Syria.
Well, I'm obviously blessed to have a partner in my wife that thinks like me, right? That, we know that one, even as early as when we met and we got married, we had a similar world vision and world view. We knew that our life had to have purpose, and that purpose came from helping others. And so we've always wanted to, after we got married and left Austria, moved to the US and got an education, started a family. In the back of our minds, we've always wanted to be able to go back and help others. We've always wanted to fulfill that common mission desire of being world savvy and travelers and being missionaries in places where people truly need help. And so we've done, as we've, as the 90s rolled and we went through our education and started a family and had good jobs, then that desire kept coming up. And so in 2004, after a few years of some personal challenges in my own family in Romania, not challenges, but actually real pain. My mom passed away quite young from a tooth infection. My dad, within a year of her passing away, had heart surgery and he never fully recovered well enough, and we thought he probably was going to pass away very soon after her. So this was 2002, 2004 time frame. We felt that God was telling us to go and be with him and go and be part of the work that he has for us in Romania and in other parts around large cities across Europe, working with refugees. And so we moved to Romania in 2004, December 2004, we moved back to Romania. We thought it was going to be for just a short while, maybe a year and a half at most.
Yeah.
And we were there about almost close to 11 years.
Oh, wow.
So it was, we thought we're going to go help my dad and look after him, thinking that he probably will pass away. And well, he actually he lived 11 more years.
Oh, nice.
By virtue of us being there, looking after him and helping him and providing him with that medical care that he needed outside the country. It extended his life, and so we're grateful to be able to have done that for him. But at the same time, shortly after we moved to Romania, I was given this tremendous opportunity to work for a Dutch company to start the first private hospital in the country. And so we set up, my background being in healthcare management. Then I went to work for a Dutch company, and we built the first private hospital in Romania. And I built and run that for about 6 years. And so we were changing the landscape of medical care in Romania. Medical care was one of those elements that, medical, besides many other industries also, under communism, healthcare and industry overall stagnated tremendously. They invested very little in, though healthcare was free and available to everyone, it was painful to receive healthcare in dilapidated hospitals from medical professionals without any bedside manners, where corruption meant that going to a hospital to receive medical care, you actually had to bribe someone, give them money, put money in their pocket to be able to receive that medical care, or otherwise you wouldn't get the time of day from them. So it was that, that web of lies of communism and socialism that just perpetrated and developed a system that was just built on corruption, only serving very few, and the masses really receiving a promise that was never delivered. And so we were part of changing that landscape in the country and building private healthcare systems. And as we were part of that journey and building those systems, then as my time ended with the hospital, then got an opportunity to join a wonderful organization called World Vision, an international development organization. And I was the executive director of the organization in the country. And then we moved to Cyprus, where we worked with within the Middle East, Eastern Europe region, looking after hundreds of thousands of refugees. So it was really at the outbreak of the Syria refugee crisis, 2014, 15, when you would see on the news millions of refugees moving from Syria into Greece, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, just people walking to a better, to new freedom, to a future they couldn't have in Syria because of the way the country had fallen apart. And so there were desperate individuals, and my work with World Vision involved looking after hundreds of thousands of these refugees who were being helped by our teams in many parts around the world, not only in Syria and in Jordan and in Lebanon, where we had refugees.
I hope we didn't die here. I know. Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
You're back. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Did I drop?
You did for a second, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're talking about helping through World I can't. Oh, there he.
Oh, there we are.
Okay, you're back.
Our internet dropped, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, I was sharing about our work with World Vision and looking after the hundreds of thousands of refugees. We had camps throughout the Middle East, in Syria itself, and parts of Syria and Jordan and in Lebanon, and from large camps to tented settlements where refugees were receiving care, food, clothing. Wow. Children were looked after and so forth. But we're also looking after that exodus of refugees going through Greece into Eastern Europe, and we provided transportation, clothing, food, medical services along the way. So our teams, we had about 2,500 people throughout the region. Not all of them looking after refugees, but of the 2,500 people, roughly about half of them were involved in refugee work. Wow. And they were providing pretty much a lifeline to these refugees who are dependent on, charitable institutions like World Vision, international organizations, because oftentimes local governments wouldn't want to help them. They wouldn't want to. They wanted them out of their country because, for most part, they were a liability to their population, and they're fearful of the. When you have a country like Lebanon that is 25% made up of refugees that just entered your country in a matter of months, it's a destabilizing factor in a country that's already very vulnerable and very fragile in many ways. And so many of these governments weren't able to really provide the care that these refugees were needing. Children had to continue their education, had to receive medical care. Parents had to provide food and clothing for their children. I remember going to through refugee camps, tented settlements in Lebanon, and talking to the elders of that settlement, and asking them, how can we best help you? And they said, we're just so grateful for everything that you do. Sorry, I'm choking here, but he said the one thing that we actually need is a place to bury our dead.
Oh, wow.
They said I remember just even at that time, it's one of those things that you cannot erase from your memory when you have individuals who are just so broken and so desperate, and they experience life and death around them at every step of the way, and then saying, our friends and family members are dying, and we don't have a place to bury them. Can you help us with that?
Wow.
So, anyway.
Well, I'll tell you, it's got to be so fulfilling, though, to go from, escaping and a refugee yourself to full circle and being able to help them and to do what you've done. Pretty amazing.
Yeah. It was very rewarding. It was very, it's hard work. It's not for the faint of heart. It's hard work because you see humanity at its worst in many parts. You see family members separated, parents losing children. You still see the picture of that little boy that washed ashore in Greece, who drowned because the boat sank and his parents can save him, and so on. So it's not pleasant, but it's so needed.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I want to thank you for sharing your story, and I'd like to have you on here again sometime. We're at the top of the hour, so. But yeah, that was a lot. I mean, like I said, to go from what your thought process was of, going underneath that bridge, not knowing if you're going to get shot or captured, to, turning around and being able to help people yourself. What an amazing, amazing story. And you're an amazing individual. So
well, thank you.
You're
it's
welcome.
My pleasure to be able to share this with you.
Yeah. So with that, I'd like to see if there's any questions. If you're on here, you can look down at the bottom. There's a place that says Q&A. If you have a question, type it in, and we'll see if we get any questions. Okay, here's one. Have you ever considered or been asked to write a book?
Yeah, countless times.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, I've been asked to, or I've been
Okay.
suggested I should.
Yeah.
Have I ever considered? Yeah, probably. I'm not a. That would not be my skill, my forte.
It
Uh,
wasn't mine either, Kathleen, but I did it. So you,
well,
you
good for
ever
you.
you ever want to consider it or anything, let me know.
Okay.
I mean, you got a great story there, and I think it could help a lot of people. So,
Yeah.
any other questions? I got one more question. What happened to your friends that escaped with you? Do you stay in contact with them?
Half of them. Yeah.
Okay.
So of the three other of my friends, the four of us, one other is in Phoenix, Arizona, where
Okay.
we've also lived for a while, and
Yep.
so we're in close contact. We've been ever friends, and so we share that journey
Okay.
and part of life together. The other two friends, well, one of them went back to Romania, and we just with the passing of time, we lost contact, and actually the second one too. So two went back after a period of time, and two of us moved to the U.S.
Okay.
And those that are in the U.S., we kept in touch, and we're good friends to this day.
Good. Good. Well, I want to thank you for being on here. I truly appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone so much for listening to this episode of Never Buy the Book. Please share it with someone that you care about. And don't forget to subscribe through your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. Next month, our guest will be Kim Hood. She's an amazing woman and mother of three who discovered her husband of 16 years was living a double life. The discovery, as you can imagine, turned her life upside down. Our episode is called Exit Wounds, Healing the Cycle of Abuse. If you know anyone who is currently in or healing from an abusive or toxic relationship, you do not want to miss this insightful episode. It will blow your mind and it'll touch your heart. As we close today, remember, if you're not doing it by the book, it just might mean something great. Until next time, be great.